Hello, welcome to this business studies lesson. So the target audience for this lesson would be O-level student, IGCSE student, grade 10 and 11 student and the IB student. I am Mrs. Bibi Karima Karimbekus Lekan. So today we will be looking at chapter 4, that is the types of business organization. In this chapter, you will learn about sole trader and partnership, the difference between incorporated business and unincorporated business, private and public limited company, franchise and joint ventures, and public corporation. Forms of business organization. Almost every country consists of two business sectors. They are private sector and public sector. So private sector businesses are operated and run by private individuals, whereas public sector businesses are operated by the government or the state. So here is a look at the legal structure of business divided into private sector and public sector. So there are several forms of business organization in the private sector, and they vary according to how they are owned, controlled and financed and the owner's liability. So the different businesses in the private sector are sole trader, partnership, limited companies. So in limited companies we have private limited companies and public limited companies, and then we have franchise and joint ventures. On the other hand, in the public sector, these are businesses which are owned and controlled by the government or the state. So we have public corporation. So let us start with sole traders. Sole traders are the oldest and most common form of business in the world and take up as much as 90% of all businesses in a country. The business is owned and run by one person only. Even though he can employ people, he is still the sole proprietor of the business. They are the sole owners of the business, which is also called one-man business. Most sole traders finance their business from their personal savings, borrowing from family and friends, or from bank loans. Examples of sole trading businesses are hairdressing, plumbing, vehicle repairs, and the local florists. Therefore, sole traders businesses are so common since there are so little legal requirements to set up. Sole trader must register their business names with the registrar of business names. The owner must also send its annual account to the government tax office. And lastly, they must obey to all basic laws for trading and commerce. Let us now have a look at the advantages and disadvantages of sole traders. The advantages are there are few legal formalities which are required to operate the business. The owner is his own boss, therefore, he has total control over the business. The sole trader also receives all profit after tax and therefore has an incentive to work. He is also motivated to work because he gets all the profits. The owner, that is the sole trader, has freedom to choose his working hours or whom to employ. He has personal contact with customers, which can therefore increase customer loyalty. He does not have to share information with anyone but the tax office. Thus, he enjoys complete secrecy. However, on the other hand, the disadvantages are the sole trader has no one to discuss problems with. Sole trading business has unlimited liability. Unlimited liability means if the business goes bankrupt, the owner, that is the sole trader, will lose all the money that he has invested in the business plus all his personal belongings and assets. The sole trader has limited finance or capital. Therefore, the business will remain small. The owner normally spends long hours working and without any holidays. The sole trader often lack all the skills they need to run their business successfully. The business does not benefit from economies of scale. Economies of scale are a reduction in the average cost as a business increases its size. In a sole trader business, there is also no continuity and no legal identity. Therefore, sole trading business are unincorporated businesses. That is, a business with no legal separate identity. That is, the owners have unlimited liability. Unlimited liability means if an unincorporated business fails or goes bankrupt, then the owner will lose everything. That is, money invested into the business and all his or her personal wealth or belongings. Hence, sole traders and partnership are known to be unincorporated businesses. Let us now move on to partnership. Partnership is a legal agreement between two or more people, usually up to 20, to own, finance, and run a business jointly and to share any profits. Examples of partnership are accountancy, law, and dentistry. Although it is not a legal requirement in most countries, many partnerships are established with a deed of partnership. So, a deed of partnership is a legal document drawn up by a solicitor or lawyer. This deed of partnership sets out the rules of the partnership, including how much money each partner has to put into the business, who is responsible for decision making, the specific responsibilities of partners, how profits of the business are to be shared or used, the procedure for removing a partner or introducing a new business partner, arrangement for dissolving the partnership and ending the business. The advantages of partnership are it is easy to set up since the partners may sign a legal agreement only, that is, the deed of partnership, which sets out the rights and obligation of each partner. There are more capital which can be invested compared to the sole trader, as in the sole trader there is only one person, whereas in a partnership there are more than one person investing in the business, which allows for further expansion. Responsibilities, workload, and decision making are shared, which can lead to better decision. Partners can bring in new skills and ideas into the business. Secrecy about business matters since the accounts are not published. However, the disadvantages of partnership are unlimited liability. That is, if the business goes bankrupt, the partners will lose their personal belongings. There is no separate legal identity, no continuity. If the business ceases to exist, or if one partner leaves or dies, therefore the business will discontinue. There is the sharing of profits, unlike sole trader, where the latter keeps all the profit for himself. Disagreement between partners may cause difficulties with the business, and partners may also be dishonest. Limited capital compared to companies. Another form of partnership is the limited liability partnership LLP. In some countries, it is possible to create the LLP. These are partners with limited liability, but in such businesses, shares cannot be bought and sold. This type of partnership is a separate legal identity which still exists after a partner's death. So far, we have learned that sole trader and partnership are unincorporated businesses. Now, companies are incorporated businesses, and the two types of companies are private limited companies where there is restricted share ownership and public limited companies where the shares are offered to the public. Let us now study incorporated businesses. So they are private limited companies, Ltd, and public limited companies which may written as PLC. Limited companies are incorporated businesses or corporation. Limited companies are jointly owned by shareholders. So what is a company? A company is a separate legal unit from its owners. That is, it is an incorporated business. This means that the business will continue to exist if one of the owners die. That is, there is continuity. Next, the business has a legal agreement. They issue shares to raise capital. Next, the accounts are kept separate from the accounts of owners. There is also limited liability, and the companies they pay taxes on their profit. Let us now learn the definition of these key words. Shares. It conveys the ownership rights in a company. The higher the shares held, the higher the ownership right, and the higher the amount of dividend. Shareholders. They are owners in a limited company. They buy shares which represent part ownership of the company. Dividend. This is a payment out of profits to shareholders as a reward for their investment. Stock exchange. This is the global market for the purchase and sales of new or existing shares in public limited company. Private limited company. Private limited companies are businesses owned by shareholders, but they cannot sell shares to the public. Therefore, capital is raised through shares issued privately, often to family members, friends, and relatives. All shareholders have limited liability. Do you know the largest company in the world is the American retail company Walmart with 2.3 million employees and a revenue in 2016-2017 of 4,850,000 and $873. Private limited company, the advantages are shares can be sold to a large number of people. The sale of shares can therefore lead to a much larger sum of capital to invest in the business. It is an incorporated business, meaning all shareholders have limited liability. This is an advantage as it means if the company goes bankrupt, the shareholders will not be forced to sell their personal possessions to pay the debts. Limited liability, therefore, encourages people to buy shares. As a separate legal identity, private limited company has continuity of existence and can be transferred to new owners. The shareholders can elect directors to manage the business on their behalf. Shareholders receive dividends from profits. The sale of shares can raise significant capital. No takeover risk due to control over issue of shares. That is, the shareholders are able to retain control of the business. The disadvantages are there are many legal formalities. That is, it is complicated to set up. There are two important documents that have to be sent to the registrar of companies, and they are Memorandum of Association and Article of Association. We will be looking at these two important documents in the next slide. Shares cannot be sold or transferred without the agreement of other shareholders. There is less secrecy, that is, the accounts will be published. Private limited company cannot offer its shares to the general public. As learned from the previous slide, companies have to prepare two important documents, which are the Memorandum of Association and Article of Association, which have to be sent to the Registrar of Companies. So, what is a Memorandum of Association? The Memorandum of Association will contain detail like the official name and address of the company and directors. The objectives of the company must be well stated as well as the number of shares to be bought by each of the directors. On the other hand, articles of association are the internal rules and regulation that provide details on the rules under which the company can be formed, the rights and duties of all the directors, the rules concerning the election of directors and the holding of official meeting, and lastly, the procedures to be followed for the issuing of shares. Now we move on to public limited companies, which are incorporated businesses just like private limited companies. Public limited companies are often large companies owned by shareholders who have limited liability. The company can sell its shares to the general public. Therefore, they have potential access to limitless funds that they can use to develop the business. The owners of PLCs have little involvement with running of the business they own. As the PLC grows, there is divorce between ownership and control. Now, what is divorce between ownership and control? In public limited companies, it is difficult to and practically impossible to involve all shareholders in decision making. Therefore, an annual general meeting is done. The annual general meeting is a legal requirement for all companies. Shareholders may attend the AGM to vote on who they want to be on the board of directors for the coming year. The directors are given the responsibility of running the business and take decisions. So, this is the reason why we say shareholders own the company. So, the ownership is for the shareholders. The shareholders they vote for board of directors, and the board of directors they will take all important decisions. So, the board of directors will be represented by the directors. So, this is the reason why we say the directors control the company. The annual general meeting. AGM. AGM is a legal requirement under the Companies Act for all companies where shareholders are invited to vote for board of directors for oncoming year. The purpose and functions of AGM are: it meets the legal requirements under the Companies Act. The purpose of the AGM is to inform shareholders on the company performance and future resolutions, to vote and elect board of directors to manage and control the company, to invite shareholders' comments and suggestions, to declare dividends, to communicate business goals. A way shareholders may influence the business policy is through the AGM. Now we move on to the advantages and disadvantages of public limited company. The advantages are there are limited liability, just like private limited company. Incorporated business, that is, it has a separate legal identity. There is continuity. Public limited company can raise very large sums of capital. This is what we call limitless funds. There is also no restriction in the buying and selling of shares. On the other hand, the disadvantages are it is often complicated to set up. For example, there are costs of consultants and advisors, costs which are quite expensive. Many legal formalities, especially concerning the disclosure of accounts, more regulations and control. The selling of shares to the public is expensive. Public limited company may lose control over it when it goes public. That is, there is risk of takeover. Do you know that Richard Branson of Virgin Group converted his company back from public limited company to private limited company? So now let us have a look at the following definition which are related to public limited company. Firstly, what is going public? So going public means converting into a public limited company. That also implies divorce between ownership and control. So in the previous slides, what we have learned is that shareholders, they own the company, but they appoint directors, and the directors, they control the company. What are prospectus? A prospectus is a document that gives details about the company, for example, about its history, profit records, prospect, future plans, etc. The amount of capital it is raising and information about the share offer. It is issued to provide information and attract potential investors. We have also looked at divorce between ownership and control, like explained before. The shareholders, they own the company but elect board of directors to manage and control the business. Now we move on to the next concept of our chapter, which is on franchise. So what is a franchise? A franchise is a business based upon the use of the brand names, the promotional logos, and the trading methods of an existing successful business. The franchisee buys the license to operate this business from the franchisor. So in a franchise, we have two main parties, which is the franchisee and the franchisor. So the franchisor is therefore the firm who sells its product, brand name, idea, and service to another firm, that is the franchisee. And the franchisee uses the same logo and setting. Well-known examples of franchise are McDonald's restaurant and the Body Shop. Now we move on to the advantages of franchise to the franchisor first. So the franchisee buys the license from the franchisor to use the brand name. The expansion of the franchise business is much faster than if the franchisor had to finance all new outlets. The management of the outlets is the responsibility of the franchisee. All products sold must be obtained from the franchisor. Advantages of franchise to the franchisee. The chances of business failure are much reduced. For example, well-known franchise such as Chicken Licken, The Natural Sauce, and Hilton Hotel franchise have worked wonderfully well. All the supplies are obtained from the central source, that is, from the franchisor. There are fewer business decisions to make than with an independent business. For example, in terms of the store layout and the range of products, that all will be decided by the franchisor. The training for staff management is provided by the franchisor. And also, banks are often more willing to lend money to franchisees due to the relatively low risk, as the franchise is already successful and well known. The franchisor also pays for advertising. The disadvantages of franchise to the franchisor. Poor management of one franchise outlet can lead to a bad reputation for the whole business. The franchisee keeps profit from the outlet. The disadvantages of franchise to the franchisee are there is less independence than with operating a non-franchise business. The franchisee may be unable to make decisions that will suit the local area. The license must be paid to the franchisor and sometimes possibly a percentage of the annual turnover. The next concept is joint ventures. A joint venture is where two or more businesses start a new project together, sharing capital, risk, and profits. Examples of well-known joint ventures are Walmart joint venture with the Bharti in Enterprise India. Walmart is the world's largest retail business and wanted to enter the Indian market. Initially, Walmart did not set up its own stores as it had little knowledge of the Indian market or Indian customers. So, Walmart set up with the Bharti Enterprise, one of India's largest business group. The next example is Jaguar Land Rover joint venture with Chery in China. So Jaguar also has an agreement which led to the production of Jaguar and Land Rover in China. The joint venture was to be formed, create a research and development facility, to develop and manufacture new models, to set up engine manufacturing operation, and to create a sales network in China. So when we are talking about joint ventures, this is where businesses they join together to work on a project. Now we move on to the advantages of joint ventures. Firstly, the sharing of costs. This is very important, especially for expensive projects such as aircraft. Local knowledge when the joint venture company is based in the country. Also, technologies, superior management, and customers of each other. So, all these are shared. The risks are also shared. However, the disadvantages of joint ventures are the profits will have to be shared, disagreement over important decisions might occur, the two joint ventures might have different ways of running their business, therefore leading to culture clashes due to different style of management. Now we move on to the last concept of this lesson, which is public cooperation. So public cooperation, this is a business in the public sector that is owned and controlled by the state and government. So advantages of public cooperation are some industries are so important that it is thought to be essential for the government ownership, for example, electricity or water supply. Why public cooperation? Secondly, to avoid monopolies. Next, sometimes the government step in, especially for those businesses which are failing. So the government step in to secure job. On the other hand, the disadvantages of public cooperation are there are no profit motives, which leads to inefficiencies, no close competition because there are the lack of incentive to increase consumer choice. The government can use these businesses for political reasons. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of public cooperation. So what we have learned today, sole traders are one-man business. In partnership, there is a partnership deed which is always recommended. Sole trader and partnership are unincorporated businesses, which means that they have unlimited liability, no separate legal identity, no continuity. Companies, on the other hand, are incorporated business, and the two incorporated businesses that we have looked at today are the private limited company and public limited company. And then we have seen that franchise businesses are very popular all over the world, and joint ventures businesses are mostly for businesses which seek to expand into new market overseas or to develop new advanced product and technologies. Hope that you have enjoyed this lesson. We'll see you next time for another interesting one. Thank you. Bye bye.